Meet Sheila, the first person to be treated with phenylketonuria, otherwise known as PKU. Born in 1949, diagnosed in Birmingham, England in 1951, 2-year-old Sheila is trialled on a low phenylalanine diet. These were the results.
You will see now the patient's behavior, not at the beginning, but already after a year's diet. She sits up, she stands, her hair, which before was fair, which was blonde, is now, has darkened, very much so. And she played with my car keys there, not a very psychological test, but you see that she took interest in her surrounding, which she didn't do at all beforehand. She even started to stand up and walk with some help. Still somewhat atactic. And now we added the phenylalanine, a little more than would have usually been in the diet of the child. And now you will see the change of her behavior, her vacant expression, the hair got rough, she dribbled, salivated, she was atactic. You see the impression, I need not to explain that clearer. And 2 days later, with the same regime, the whole thing was still worse. She was unhappy. She felt intoxicated. I think it's a little different from what happens over a long time in phenylketonuria normally. This is an acute intoxication with phenylalanine. Tried to get her up, stand. You see her ataxia. She didn't want to stand. She didn't want to play anymore. Perhaps a little. But she was thoroughly unhappy. We were then quite convinced that we did harm to the child, that we couldn't go on. So we resumed the phenylalanine low diet again. And 4 weeks later, fortunately, she recovered completely. This short span of intoxication had gone, and she now starts to move around again and kept contact with her surrounding. She climbed up the stair.
Newborn screening, or the heel prick, was introduced in 1960, which enabled PKU to be identified and low phenylalanine diets to be prescribed to all diagnosed babies who were at very high risk of developing mental disability. Now here I am in 2025, 41-year-old and part of the PKU community who all enjoy the benefits of the Guthrie test, leaving no babies left undiagnosed, and a long-established low phenylalanine diet to keep us all on track throughout life. But there's still big problems. The low phenylalanine diet that we all rely on only became diet for life in the early 1990s. During these times, a lot of young people were misguided and misadvised by health professionals who confirmed that they would live full and safe, healthy lives if they continued life without adhering to the diet that protected them against mental illness. Those young people who were removed from dietary treatment went on and lived a variety of different experiences from person to person. Some suffered severe mental illness, some mild mental illness, and some not experiencing much adverse effects at all. It is worth mentioning though that PKU is sly. It sneaks up on you. A lot of people who say that they're not experiencing any adverse effects are just not recognising the effects that they're experiencing. Across the community, there's a huge fear of upsetting or scaring new PKU parents who already face the difficult news of the diagnosis of their child. That leaves a huge section of our very own community out in the cold, dealing with mental illness and difficult life circumstances, and nobody to speak to. They haven't got a platform. They can't express themselves. We've seen it many times before in the community when somebody tries to express themselves, somebody who's having difficulty or having challenging life experiences on the back of their PKU. Most of us have seen people online trying to communicate the difficult experiences that they have had, but it doesn't go anywhere, does it? They don't get the connection that they hoped to get. It just doesn't happen. They feel they don't have a voice in their very own community. And again, it's just another kick in the teeth. The first kick in the teeth when the medical professionals give them the go-ahead to resume off diet, and now they're having difficulty and nobody wants to listen. And if new PKU parents are not being informed about the realities, the real life experiences lived by people who have PKU, if they're not informed about these things, then how can they possibly get the education that they need to be the very best PKU parents that they can be for their child? Surely it would do them a favour if they knew the full picture, they were fully informed. What happens if their child gets to adolescence and they don't and their child starts eating some things that they shouldn't be eating, and they don't recognise what's going on because they weren't informed about what happens in these circumstances? If they're told about the realities, about what happens in these situations, what to look out for, they might be able to do something to help at that time. This fear of scaring new PKU parents not only isolates people in our very own community, leaving them completely alone to deal with mental illness and difficult life circumstances with no support and to gain no understandings from anybody, because PKU is complex. But if those PKU parents are not informed, and because those PKU parents were protected against the realities, they didn't pick up on it, they didn't recognise what was happening, and couldn't do anything to help. If they are fully informed, maybe they would recognise it, maybe they would be able to help and get that person with PKU straight back on track. Surely that's the best scenario here. But here we are. People, we see it online, we see people trying to reach out, but it doesn't really go anywhere, does it? They don't really make any real progress in being heard. And nobody does anything about it, do they? They can't tell the truth because they feel ashamed. It's got to be positive. It's got to be I'm doing this with life. I'm doing so well, and it's almost as though the PKU world wants to celebrate those who are doing brilliant things, but they don't want to hear the difficulties. Those having difficulties, they don't want to hear that because it shouldn't be celebrated, but they should be supported. They should be listened to. I've spoken at a good number of PKU events and I've never ever been told that I shouldn't say something, but there was always a sort of silent pressure that I shouldn't say too much. There was always a feeling that people wouldn't want to hear about difficulty, and maybe the organisers wouldn't want you to be speaking about it, despite not actually saying that to you. Here's a comment from Kate, who also spoke at PKU events. I'm totally here for this, Paul. There's so much that needs to be said, and honestly, I have so many questions no one in the PKU community will answer. I can't wait to watch your videos. I know we've been at a lot of the same events in the past, and I have very much felt censored. The biggest applause I ever got was seeing some things a certain company didn't want me to say. I was never invited back, funnily enough. And you know, I've been around for a while. I've met a lot of people in the community, and there's some lovely people. And all of this might be happening very unintentionally, but unintentional discrimination is still discrimination. Here's some information from the government website. Indirect discrimination, when everyone's treated the same, but people with a protected characteristic are put at a disadvantage. If we're all celebrating the brilliance of some while failing to support the needs of others, isn't that subjecting the ones who already feel that they don't have a voice to indirect discrimination? There are people who are in positions who could potentially help with this kind of thing, who have said that we are the lost generation, people of my age and maybe a bit older. But we're not lost. I'm right here. I'm speaking to you now. We're misadvised. So does that mean that they're washing their hands of us? Does that mean that we're not important to them anymore? If you've recognised things like this happening around the community and you feel that things should be better, please comment in the comment section below to show your support for change.